When it comes to your stock finish, it's really up to you. If you're looking at making a really nice kind of gentleman's hawk in here, you're going to want to take it up to really high sandpaper. I mean, like 400 grit if you really want to. I think in most cases though, from what I've read and how it worked on this kit here, you can really get away with a 240 grit sandpaper. It's enough to get out some of those rogue file marks that I left in early on, getting things matched to the hardware, but it's not so fine that you're going to take forever to get the stock ready. For me, this whole sanding process was more about getting little bumps and nicks out than it was really removing a whole lot of wood. So I just kind of took a nice gentle pass all the way through it. I used a scraper in a couple spots, just a normal cabinet scraper, to get rid of some, you know, kind of rough spots. I didn't want to go back in with a file. There were a couple nicks though that I had to go in with a fine half round file to get out. On the comb, I somehow really nicked it. I think probably in a vise, but I just went in there with a file and dusted that off real quick, and it came out fine. So just go over your whole stock with that 240 grit sandpaper and just even out any of those bumps, nicks, and file marks in there. I left a few file marks down towards my butt plate in the buttstock area. It was really hard to get to, and I did not want to remove too much wood and have it not match with my butt plate. And I think I'm just going to chalk this up to beginner's trouble with it. I think knowing what I know now, I would have removed that wood to match with the butt plate a lot more gentler. But now I'm at the point where if I go in and really clean it up so that it looks as nice as the areas that I didn't really nick, I'm going to have to go back and refile the butt plate and then refinish the butt plate. So it's not bad. I don't think you're really going to even notice it. And I think if you're new to building like I am, you're going to have a few spots like that as well. And it's important to clean up some of them, but I think some of them you just got to let go. As far as the stock goes now, I'm ready to do what we call whiskering the stock. This is something that I think would be more important if we were working with a fine curly maple or curly walnut stock. This is a really plain beechwood stock, so I'm not sure how important the whiskering is, but we're going to go ahead and do it just for it because it's a fundamental of rifle building as far as long rifles go. And what we're going to do here is wet the stock a little bit all over with just kind of a damp paper towel. And then we're going to hit it with a heat gun, and that's going to cause the grain of the stock to whisker up. And all those little end grain little bits are going to stand up with that moisture and then that heat, and then we're going to just scrape those off with our cabinet scraper. And that's going to prep our wood for staining. So I've got my water here and just a paper towel, and we're just going to let this get damp and go over our stock. Now I said that, you know, this is just a simple beech stock. It's not like a nice fancy curly maple, but it does have some nice figure in it. I mean, you can see here in the butt and up here into the wrist, you know, there is some grain structure in there. So, I mean, it's not an expensive kit. You know, I think it's $350 or so. You don't quote me on that. And with the holidays coming up, I'm sure there are going to be some deals. So I think for what you pay for with these kits, and especially with what I'm seeing online with a lot of people hunting with these right now, they're fine shooters, fine guns to get started with. By no means do you need a nice, huge, expensive custom muzzleloader. And this wood is really dry, so it's going to be soaking that up already. So I'm just kind of keeping a note in my head of where I've gone. I'm going to try to do the whole gun and then come back and brush it. Got some ugly marks there. I'm going to try to see if I can get out before we stain it. We don't need those file marks hanging out. And you might notice that on this, there's some stains, I think kind of in here, from the files or from the sandpaper. I'm leaving those. To me, I think they kind of add to the worn look that I'm shooting for. But if you want a nice, clean, polished gun, you're going to want to go through and clean those out with some sandpaper or file. I'm not sure how much you can see it, but when I feel it now, I can feel those little pieces of end grain popping up that we're going to have to take off. Pretty neat. I personally like the feel or texture of a scraped gun over a kind of high polish, high sanded gun. I think it gives you a little bit more to grip, and it just feels a little bit more handmade. It's really up to you. I mean, I could probably do this a little faster coming in with my sandpaper, my 240 grit sandpaper, but the scraper gives me a little bit of a texture with it, and I like that. And it's really all up to you. If you have sandpaper, you don't have a card scraper, don't sweat it. You don't need to do this process just like this. Sandpaper will do just fine. I'm not pressing hard. I'm not intending to really move wood. I'm just scraping this along the surface. And you can see there's a little bit of a color change, or I can see it. Over here where I've scraped, it's a little lighter, and here where it needs whiskered, it's a little darker, a little grayer. So I'm going to take the scraper along there. I could be using a concaved scraper for this, but I'm on such a wide area, and I'm trying to cut or scrape real narrow paths. So I'm not too worried about leaving flat spots. And if you feel like you've missed anything, you can just go over, feel it, and the gun will tell you where it needs work. Now, if I was making a really fine, really nice rifle, I'd go ahead and do this maybe 3 or 4 times. If I was planning on doing some aquafortis and I had, a $200, $300, $400 stock blank on it. But these Hawkens weren't really known for being that nice. So we're just going to go through and do the whiskering process once, scrape that end grain off, and then we're going to let it dry and get ready for staining.